This is Let's Talk Radical Radio, getting to the root causes of the important issues of the day. This on-the-air community forum believes your voice matters and welcomes all thoughts and views without judgment. Please join today's conversation by calling 415-663-8492 or tweet us at Let's Talk on KWMR.
Your hosts today are Robin Carpenter leading our conversation, Paul Raffel answering the phones, and I'm Mary Frank. Bernie Stephan is away today.
And when you call in and hear the phone ringing, please hang on. When you hear me say you're on the air, please give us your first name, turn down your radio, and please watch your language.
And today we're talking about politics and relationships, asking the question, how do you handle it when you disagree with friends and loved ones, family members, others? We'd love for you to join our conversation by calling us at 415-663-8492. And one of the reasons I picked this topic was because, you know, I grew up in an environment where politics and religion were not discussed during dinner, but at all other times. And we were taught that you discuss things where you disagree based on facts, considered opinions, but that you don't do ad hominem attacks. You don't call someone an idiot because they say support Donald Trump and you support Hillary Clinton. You listen and you ask questions. And I was taught if you can't win people over to your point of view, or at least have them understand your point of view without using name calling or ad hominem attacks, then you either are pretty poor at making points, or your point maybe needs to be reconsidered. So it was a time where there was a lot, of course, with the civil rights movement and being in the Deep South, there was a lot of political upset and unrest, and there were a lot of discussions. But it was considered, in at least the household I was in, is that you can discuss these things. And I have found that by living in West Marin in Northern California, it's actually the most repressive place I've ever lived for expressing a difference of opinion. If you don't follow sort of the line of your personal tribe of friends, which normally in your personal tribe of friends, you all, for the most part, agree on issues, you get pretty severely attacked. That I don't see the ability very much of people to listen to others. We're very, we're in a very liberal area, so it's very easy if someone says they support Trump to go, oh my God, they support Trump. And instead of, well, why are they supporting Trump? And what is it about Trump? And why do they hate Hillary? Why do they maybe like Bernie? Why do Hillary lovers hate those of us who support Bernie? There's this heatedness as opposed to a deeper listening. And I just spent a month back home on the Gulf Coast in New Orleans and Mobile, Alabama, and some of the rural areas around there, Lafayette and Dauphin Island and Codin and all of those smaller towns. And I spent a lot of time talking to people who, of course, have very different viewpoints than my friends here. And it was really enlightening to see how open people were, when I'm openly the commie prodigal child coming back for a visit. So I thought it would be a really great topic to discuss, especially in West Marin. We had a really hard time when the Drakes Bay Oyster Company issue was going on, of ad hominem attacks, people spreading misinformation, a lot of lying going on back and forth and name calling about the line. And I would like us to explore as a community how we can listen and be present for other points of view in a more open-hearted manner, and not just in our own community, but across the country. Instead of being so disengaged from people in the Deep South or people that we think are racist, or to try to listen and understand. I think it's really important.
You're absolutely right. It's important. Yeah, I wish I could say that I did not make ad hominem attacks when I get all fired up, especially if yes. Anyway, yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? I in my own family, my late brother was certainly not on the wavelength that I was on in almost everything. So we ended up not really speaking to each other. I mean, we're in different countries anyway, but we ended up not really being in contact except Christmas and birthdays, That's kind of, which was sad, but I don't know. It was just kind of frustrating to try and even have a conversation with the guy, actually.
I just came back from a long weekend
in your homeland.
In my hometown.
Yeah.
And I made a resolved vow on the plane as I was going that no matter what, I wasn't going to get into heated conversations. I was just going to listen, but I have to confess, it didn't always work because I have hot buttons, and as much as I think I've resolved that and I can disengage, I actually, and this is a very embarrassing confession, I actually ended up yelling at my 100-year-old kind of anti-MAME aunt. I could not believe that I did that. I know, it was pathetic. It was just pathetic. But I do have my hot buttons, but I am working on it. But it's tough. It's tough when so much is at stake right now. I think that people realize this is a very important election, for example. And, it's very, very important because of all the things that are on the table. So I think everybody's a little more heated than usual because of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of tension.
A lot of tension, yeah.
Yeah, we've had, as Robin was saying, the oyster company thing. The cliche is that it split the community down the middle, right? I mean, there were people who...
Well, it basically split the community down the 80-20% line, which made it even more heated, I think, in a way. Yeah. Because
there's things like that all the time here that I've noticed where there's not even a discussion. No one's willing to come to the table. There's a certain person who even... did things to the station, just because we were going to do a show that he didn't like the subject of. And, yes, it's that kind of thing where you won't even come to the table to talk about anything.
So why is that, though? Why?
Why? I don't know. I don't know why it's worse than it used to be. Is it worse than it used to be? I'm not sure.
I think in some ways it is, in terms of... It's worse because I think that several things. One thing that my father pointed out to me that I think is very valid, and I think I've read a few other people talk about this, with the advent of, in Washington, our Congress people, our senators, the ability that they fly in on Monday and fly back out on Friday, and they're not sort of stuck there with each other, going out to meals, being together, having to be together. When you have to be together and you don't have the ability to really separate yourself out, that creates the humanization of, I was just sharing before the show, some of the people I was talking to, one of the things I was doing while I was back home was talking to the different people that are oyster folks and shrimpers and the Gulf Coast seafood folks and what was going on there. And most of those people are fairly conservative politically and religious, and very conservative Christian religious manners. And, they all have to work together and be together. And because we were on a common topic, I think that when you have the ability to isolate yourself without any repercussion, it makes it easier. And I think our country, we've become that way where it's easier to isolate into your own little tribes and not work across aisles. Across the aisles. Yeah, we're not having the aisles crossed in Washington. And I think that both political parties I really believe that the buying out of the political parties to where they don't really respond to their voters. They don't represent their voters. They represent their donors. And that also means that people have felt very much that their voices have been suppressed or they're not being heard. And I think that whoops up more anger and emotion on both sides. Like, you're not listening to me. The whole thing with Hillary and Bernie, it's, if you're a Bernie supporter, which I am, my Hillary friends, the vitriol that gets poured on me on Facebook about why am I still supporting Bernie? I'm hurting the country. People are afraid. I think people are afraid, and I think because we're also facing something that's a critical, huge issue, climate change, and that's something that we've been told, oh, it's not real by one party, by the other party. They're not pushing as hard as we'd like to see change. So I think when you actually in your gut as human beings feel that, our actual existence on the planet is being threatened, that's got to be shadowing underneath all of our fear.
It's always in the background, yeah. With that constant
I think
anxiety.
that people, no matter what their belief system is, they somehow sense the sands are shifting.
Yeah.
And if they don't have a spiritual practice or a community that gives them a lot of support, they're really freaking out. And I think that comes out everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and, the political stage is sort of setting the example for everyone, right? I mean, it's... and Facebook and the rest of the tweets and Twitter, whatever it's called, Twitter and all that, it encourages sort of one sentence
those ad hominem attacks
right?
and really quick little jibes.
Attack, and there's all the trolls, right, that are always out there looking for a fight to start, which is... I think that's a new development and pretty sad myself. So we have a caller. Hi, caller, you're on the air. What's your name, please?
Oh, this is Charlie. New
Charlie.
development.
Yeah.
I'm anti-construction. What are you talking about? Anyway, you guys, thanks for the topic. I have learned to appreciate people, whether they're local or my relatives, who know how to disagree about something and yet not sacrifice our humanity by delving into personal hatred or, personality assassinations. And they do exist. I kind of made myself the poster boy for the Affordable Housing Project years ago. And there were people that, gave me the stink eye and, tried to jump me verbally in the post office, which I didn't take. But, there were also people I knew who disagreed with me, who, would greet me, and I'd say hello, they'd say hello, maybe we'd talk about something else.
Yeah.
But to this day, there are people that don't seem to respond to overtures of peace when everybody's running around talking about peace and grace. But, there are still two people in this community I had disagreements with, years ago. And I made a big show of reaching out to them in a kind of a no-fault, nobody's wrong, nobody's right manner. They're not buying. They're still...
They're holding a grudge.
Yeah, they're still, and it hurt me because one of them I knew pretty well for years. But I finally realized that's their problem,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
But I just wanted to get to one example. Sherry's mom, may she rest in peace, was a real right-winger. She was heavy-duty right-winger. And we were sitting there at Tony's Seafood one time, and she started going on about Reagan just out of nowhere and talking about what a great guy he was. And I had kept my mouth shut around her for a long time.
Uh-oh.
But finally, I just went on about, how responsible that guy was for so many cases of AIDS by calling it a gay disease as if, Jesus didn't like gay people or something. And, all the drawbacks of Reagan. And I really got into it with her. And she got into it with me. And then something clicked inside me and stopped and said, look, man, do you want to have peace in your family? Or do you want to have your opinion, voiced in public like this? So I kind of sat on my tension for a while after I shut up. And then I just went around and gave her a big hug and said, look, Anita, let's not let a bunch of politicians get in between us. We're family. And she was really good to me in every way. I mean, she accepted me into her family, and, that family is really pretty special. So I just wanted to offer that in closing, that it is possible, but you got to try. And sometimes you don't have to let go of your convictions, but to reject the person, instead of just their opinion, it's like the difference between saying you act like a jerk or you are a jerk. I mean, if you say you are a jerk, you don't leave them any room to move.
That's such a good point. Do you want peace or do you want to be right?
Peace with I just sound like Nixon, but with dignity. I mean, hanging on to your own, commitments to what you believe in. But it is possible, and thank you so much for a great show, and I'll be listening.
Thank you,
Thanks, Charlie.
Beautiful.
Okay, this is Let's Talk Radio with host Robin Carpenter, Paul Raffel, and I am Mary Frank. Please call us at 415-663-8492 and tell us what you think. You can also tweet us at Let's Talk on KWMR with your thoughts and opinions.
So Charlie brought up an excellent point in kind of going back to what do you do when someone has viewpoints that you find crazy or abhorrent or horrifying. And on Facebook, I actually have a few family members that are liberals. I haven't seen any of my conservative family members do this. That are like, I'm unfriending any of you who say you support Trump. You're all unfriended, and then attacked me, or I felt attacked. Then said, how on earth can you be letting these people say these things on your Facebook page? How can you be friends with people like that? How can you? And I private messaged back. Well, A, many of them are family members, and B, I'm not going to not be connected to someone because of their political beliefs. And the other person said, I don't understand. How can you have any kind of a relationship with somebody whose beliefs are so horrible compared to yours, whose beliefs are so awful? And I just said, I believe that you always keep the door open, and that you look at as Charlie said, Anita was this amazing person, and outside of her political viewpoints, it was a wonderful relationship. So that's interesting to me. How do you just cut someone off? Now, I will say, I've had friends and family that's the only thing they want to talk about. I have a sister who's an evangelical and, sort of a hypocritical evangelical, but anyway, it mixes back and forth, so she doesn't quite adhere. But we've had many years of not speaking because that was the only thing she would talk about, and I would say, let's have that not be a topic we discuss. And her thing was, I have to save your soul. It doesn't matter. That's the only thing God wants me to talk to you about. And I would just say, well, have a nice day. I have to get off the phone. I'm not going to listen to this. I don't want to hear it. Again and again. So I've had some situations where I've had to, the only reason to me to end a relationship is if a person is a dishonorable person and breaks trust with me, or if a person is a dangerous person, or if a person is, that's worth breaking a relationship over, not who wins the presidency.
Right. Oh, we have a caller. Hey. Hi, caller, you're on the air. What's your name, please?
My name's Mac.
Hi, Mac. Welcome.
Well, thank you for a wonderful topic this morning. Much appreciated. And I'm wondering if two of you moderators might take an opposing view on a hot trigger issue, and then model how to find common ground through conversational skills that we might walk away with and use in our lives.
Oh, that's a good one, Mac. Let's see. I could be my aunt who's very worried about the transgender laws in bathrooms and take her point of view.
And I could be the sister who could care less.
Well, get it on, and I appreciate your risk-taking here.
Yeah, thanks, Mac. I hope Mary and I don't break up over this.
Anything's possible. All right, thanks so much.
Thanks for calling.
So, Mary, your president, Obama, once again, now the federal government's getting involved in pushing these transgender laws on the states and creating a dangerous situation, and they should not be involved, and we're trying to protect our children, and it really worries me for my granddaughter, and, her going into a bathroom. She's 8 years old, and this whole thing is terrifying to me.
Well, I can understand how you feel, Robin, and I know many people do feel that way, but this is really a civil rights issue, And most kids are attacked either by members of the church or pedophiles who are hanging outside the bathroom door. So I don't think that's a direct problem. I think the bigger issue here is they have a right to be who they are.
Well, I don't have an issue with truly transgender people. Now, it is against my religion if someone's a transgender person. That I find, but that's us. Put that point aside. I'm worried about there are people taking advantage of the law because there was a guy that went into the Target up in Dothan and he was standing there staring at people. He was dressed just like a man. He was a regular guy. And a woman said, why don't you go ahead and leave the bathroom? Why are you just standing here? And he goes, because I have a right to, because of what Obama did. And so he was just some pervert standing there. And so the woman went and complained to the Target management and said, can you get this pervert out of the bathroom? And they said, no, not with that new Obama law. We can't make him leave if he wants to be in there.
Well, I think the real answer is having 3 bathrooms. But until we get there, you have a woman's bathroom, a men's bathroom, and a whatever else bathroom. Until we get there, and there's going to be silly perverts anywhere. I mean, that can happen and there's people right now before the law passed who would go into the bathrooms and do inappropriate things. So I think we're in a transition phase here, and I think that your kids are much more in danger by, going out alone at night than going into a bathroom in Target.
Well, I guess my feeling is I don't like the federal government and Obama telling us what to do so that the Target manager can't even kick out some pervert because they're afraid they'll get sued by the federal government.
Well, but to remember the same things were said about the civil rights laws. How can you tell me that my daughter has to go to school with a black kid? So at some point the government has to step up and legislate justice.
Well, they need to give some breathing room so that if somebody's in there taking advantage of the law, that they can kick that person out. That's what I have an issue with, is how can we make sure that people aren't taking advantage and can hurt our children.
But that's true across the board, isn't it?
I don't know. I just think that, if for the government to be suing states that are trying to protect our children, that just seems like overreach to me.
I can understand.
This has been a simulation of a table discussion.
And then what my aunt would say, I think we need more martinis. Let's talk about something else.
Say, let's agree to disagree.
Well, see, that was much too calm, and there was no name calling.
But that's kind of an emulation of a conversation I had with my aunt, and we didn't get to name calling because I tried to do as Mary did, which is, I hear you, I understand, but have you considered this? Have you considered? It's not like, you ignorant person that doesn't understand sexual assault risk management. I think just holding that space
and listening
and really listening, and that the person hears your concerns. I think that's, I spend a lot of time with that family member, and she's an amazing person, but we do have some. There are a lot of things that we don't agree about, but we try to focus on the things in common we agree on. And I think also what happens too is if you, when someone will bring up, say, Reagan, like Charlie was talking about, and I'll say, but the trickle down economics didn't really work, and we're really having a lot of things that Reagan did really caused harm. And they're like, well, that's because I said, no, I'll say, and the other person I think caused great harm was Bill Clinton when he deregulated the Telecommunications Deregulation Act, eliminating Glass-Steagall. So the other thing that I do in conversations like that is I talk about people of my own, liberal leanings who've been in office that I think have made terrible mistakes as well. That if we only look at the other guy, I think that too helps to disarm the heatedness to say, I voted for Bill Clinton and I was very disappointed in some of the things he did, and we still suffer from those repercussions, just as we suffer from repercussions from Reagan or from George Bush, that we have to look at. So I think sometimes too trying to also say, hey, my own party has made some whoppers of mistakes too.
Oh, yeah.
And I think if you really listen instead of listen in order to answer, so many people listen getting ready to, so they can just come in with their answer.
Oh, dear.
That when people feel cut off and unseen,
Paul,
I think that helps too. It keeps the heat down. because if you feel seen and heard, you're not going to be as likely to bite the person's head off, It doesn't...
Yeah, and sometimes you'll be surprised what you hear. Like for my aunt, her fear was more around people taking advantage. She wasn't concerned about, like she said, who would know if someone's transgendered coming, she wasn't concerned about a transgender person having the right to go to the bathroom. She did express concerns about what were you going to do in locker room situations with kids in high school, and I said, those are all things that I think can be worked around, or
And it's so funny because in Europe, everybody sees
everybody
Paris.
naked.
Even when I went to Paris for the first time, I said, "Oh my God, we're all using the same bathroom." So it's not a problem in Europe. I think it's basically puritanical countries that have been feeling the pinch.
And the other thing is that in Europe, and especially in France, that politics is and all the other trigger kind of conversations is what they do in cafes and sitting around the dinner table. That's what everyone talks about. I'm inclined to think that that's probably more healthy than just avoiding the subject at Thanksgiving or whenever and not talking about your beliefs over the turkey or whatever. I mean, I could see with your evangelical sister that the only thing she would ever talk about was how to save your soul, your heathen soul. But
and that's a pretty rare example of someone that, where you can't, there is no, they only have this one thing that they say and they don't want to hear anything else. And so that's very difficult. Now, it's interesting on Facebook because for me, Facebook has been great because I have this wide range of communities and people that I lived with for certain periods of times, my Birmingham friends, my Mobile friends, and so it's this way I stay connected to all these friends and my friends from elementary school that I would never stay connected to, but it's an open forum where everybody sort of sees the friendships and relationships. And so I'm curious how other people handle what happens when you have friends that will get really nasty, say in a comment thread, or make what I think are inappropriate comments to other friends who've posted something or a friend who's commented on a post you've made. I have certain ways I handle that, which is if someone makes a comment within a thread that is actually I would consider name calling or an ad hominem attack, I just delete the comment and
say what you said. That's a very good.
Yeah, what I say is, I just say, please know in this thread that if anybody makes a personal attack or makes a statement about someone I feel is slanderous or
name
calling, then I'm going to delete the thread. But if you have anything to post to say that's factual or links to other articles that are opposing what is posted here, please put those in. But I'm not going to let you say so-and-so is a fraud or da-da-da. That's not going to happen. So, and sometimes I'll delete posts that people post on my timeline and then I send them a private message and just say, I want to keep things open enough for people to feel comfortable that they won't be attacked by stating their opinion.
You libtard. Okay, this is KWMR Community Radio for West Marin, 90.5 Point Reyes Station, 89.9 Bolinas, 92.3 in the San Geronimo Valley, and streaming live on kwmr.org. And KWMR is sponsored by City Sewer Pumping, family-owned and operated by Butch and Mike Gimona, serving the West Marin area since 1951. Providing complete septic services including septic pumping, installations, repairs, and inspections. More information on their website, citysewerpumping.com, or on their Facebook page. Also reachable by phone at 415-663-1926. That's 415-663-1926. KWMR is also supported by West Marin Food and Farm Tours, offering culinary adventures in the Point Reyes area. Trips include local history, behind-the-scenes tours, and tastings of cheese, wine, oysters, grass-fed meats, pastries, produce, and more. Details available online at foodandfarmtours.com. That's foodandfarmtours.com.
You're listening to Let's Talk Radio with co-hosts Robin Carpenter, Paul, and Mary Frank. Please share your views by calling us at 415-663-1926. 8492 or tweet us at Let's Talk at KWMR.
And today we're asking, how do you handle political differences with friends and family and lovers? Do call in. When you hear me say you're on the air, give us your first name, turn down your radio, and please watch your language. And 415-663-8492.
So we're talking about how do you handle these situations. In particular, something that I find fascinating is I do think it would be very difficult for me to become involved with, if I were single and dating, someone that had very opposing political viewpoints. I've always thought that that would be really difficult for me. But then you think of, I think it's Marlee Matlin and James Carville.
Yes.
And she's a Republican strategist and he's a Democratic strategist. And
they're still married.
They're still married after all these years. But I did, the other day, I was thinking about the fact that over the past 10 years, all the work I've done in the food movement and the food sovereignty movement, many of the farmers and ranchers and people that I've worked with are more politically conservative and more religious, traditionally religious than my background. And I have met some fabulous, wonderful people, and we've worked really hard together side by side on political issues around farming and food supply. And I thought, now I could see I've become so close to so many of those people, and we have decent conversations about our political differences. But, you know, it's led me to see the closer, the more relationships I've had that I've developed as an adult, not my family and friends I grew up with. So, of course, we accepted each other's different beliefs. So that's an interesting thought. Would you, if you meet someone and you got along really well, I mean, during the whole GMO movement, I was meeting lots of Tea Partiers and people like that were supporting GMO labeling. And it really opened my eyes about when you are on this common ground, you really see the heart and soul of a person outside of their political viewpoints.
Well, the heart and soul is more important than the political viewpoints, but sometimes that can be a problem, you know.
I would have trouble.
You would not date a Republican, Paul?
Not necessarily a Republican. I think there's so little to choose between them now. But
yes, that's true.
If she were a staunch neoliberal supporter of the capitalist system, yeah, you have to. Geez, that
you have to be able to talk to each other.
You have to be able to talk, and it would be a great exercise in tolerance, I suppose. But
but you'd rather not have a second date.
It's difficult. Relationships are difficult enough, right? The more that you share, I mean, it doesn't have to be the same, but if the big issues in your life are in conflict with those of your potential partner, I think it's a problem.
But you know what's interesting, and I think is what's happening in our country now? Right now we see sort of, Trump and Clinton and Sanders, they're almost like what they used to do, those emotional drama plays where different people would act out different parts of a situation. This person's anger, this person's that. I almost see the three of them representing the emotional pieces of each of the American people, and they're representing these different, the shadow side of this and the shadow side of that, and maybe Bernie represents the childlike belief that things will be better tomorrow, or you can make them better, but that they're representing something inside of each of us, and some of us are more to one direction or the other, but they're obviously they're almost mythic and what's happening in the way that they are doing.
We're voting on emojis now.
Almost. But I think that, if you also look at when I talk to people where there are political or religious differences, I'll say, but do you believe in, kindness? Or do you believe that we should have the right to grow our own food and know what's in our food? So if we look at the end game of what we all want, what is the end game? They may think that socialism or democratic socialism is going to ruin the country. But what their end game is they'd like there to be less unemployment in their community and people to have jobs. Or their end game is they'd like their child to be able to have a college education without being a slave to a loan company. So if you look also, I think, at the end game, what is the end game of what we all want, instead of following dogma and, as we were talking about earlier, being right over having peace? Or as I say to my husband, do you want to be married or do you want to be right? So it's sort of like you get so hung up on I must, they have to understand this piece of dogma that I believe, and that. How do we look at the end game and let go? I mean, it's really an exercise in...
As I've gotten older, it's just become much less important to be right than to have peace. I don't know, that's just maybe an aging thing. Mm-hmm. Because what's really important? Love is going to trump everything as far as I'm concerned. No pun intended.
Yeah.
And when you strip everything away, we're all identical, mostly. And
we really want the same things.
We do
mostly.
want the same things. And a lot of times people go into these isms because they're looking for a way to express themselves and to connect, when really you can strip it all away and you still have the basic want and need to connect.
And I think that the political structures have really played on our reptilian primal brain by pulling up this tribalism as if it's, like, my team has got to win, and it's like Team Trump, Team Hillary, Team Bernie, and anybody's going to be, this very primitive tribal thing.
I don't think it's just necessarily primitive or tribal. It's much more a result of capitalism and a competitive.
But I'm saying I think they're appealing to that fear part in us. You've got to be with your tribe.
But I think that also comes from, like when we were working in television, Robin, it was like, kill the competition, beat the other guy. I mean, that mentality as opposed to collaboration and partnership can be death if brought to the extreme. And I think what we're seeing now is the extreme. You can only go on that vibe for so long before it's a spirit killer and a soul killer.
But I have to say, I have a little schadenfreude about the Republican Party because, they created this monster in terms of, Donald Trump has, what's the most horrifying thing to me is he obviously doesn't understand anything about the Constitution or law, or he's a salesman. He's like the perfect candidate for what's going on in this country. We idolize the reality stars. Yeah.
In a way, he's like the perfect candidate of saying what's really going on. But the things that we have completely dismissed so that we can worship Kim Kardashian's behind. It's like, it's a perfect example of just how far off track we are.
Country is.
And
but I want to say, on the other side, and having talked to quite a few people back home and here in our own community who are secret Trump supporters, that there is this undercurrent of feeling. What I heard from people back home that were Trump supporters, or that they were so disgusted with their own party, with what's happened to the country. They were not happy with what George Bush did and the wars and the waste of money and the killings. And they saw Trump as this genuine, because he says anything. They're so tired of no one that they believe in as being honest. And so they see Trump as like a businessman. This is the originally a business person who's outside the establishment who will get things done and make the deal, because they're just so sick and fed up.
Like Mussolini, yeah.
But you can say like Mussolini, but to them, they may not even remember Mussolini or know history enough to know that. To them, they just want something different. They want relief. And a lot of them who are more like my father, who's a more traditional, middle-of-the-road Republican, he finds Trump horrifying. First and foremost, because he thinks he's rude, crude, and crass. So it's just offensive that he's so crass and low class. So, but he would like Bernie. He's like, they'll never vote for Hillary because of Hillary's record with, other issues. So it's really interesting. Many of them would vote for Bernie.
Well, let's hope that happens.
Yeah, we have a caller. Hi, caller. What's your name, please?
My name is Bernie Sanders.
Hey,
Bernie.
Hey, not enough Trump bashing on this show. I'd like to hear a little bit more of that. Well, I wanted to take a turn in terms of politics and relationships, in that, like, for me, it's not just about the elections, which now everyone seems to be heated in this, like you were saying, teams, and our team's going to win and their team is bad and all of that political division, etc. For me, there's a politics that should be allowed on the stage, and try to squeeze it in wherever I can. That whole system, the game they're having you play, isn't solving the problems that we really need to be addressing. And I think on both the Democrats and Republicans, I can say to either party, they're both right or they're both wrong. In terms of being right, the Democrats are definitely right about the inequality and that we need more equality. And, I think the Republicans are right on the idea of less federal government, less hierarchy, less centralization, bring things back to the states or whatever. And I could also say there's something wrong with each party. I mean, with the Republicans, their continuing support for the elite and the status quo continues inequality, and that's a negative overall. And for the Democrats, that centralization, that hierarchy, their belief that somehow by feeding all our money from taxes, etc., through the federal government, there can be an equitable system for distribution. And I'm suggesting we also, when we talk politics, allow ourselves or allow room for discussion about the system itself, not just the players this time around.
Yeah, I would like to add something about the system, and this is going to sound surprising even to me, but I'm at the point now where I wonder if it makes any difference who's doing what, because it's always the fat cats in the polis who don't know anything about life in the streets running everything, and there's certain waves that go up and down. Okay, we have civil rights, and then women get to vote, and there's certain surges of positive energy, but it's basically been the same scenario since the beginning of time, in that the rich and powerful enslave the ones who have less, and that story's been forever. Didn't make any difference who was in power or what the party was.
And it's interesting.
And then the way you guys have been talking about how we talk to each other so that we don't create enemies, etc. And it's, for me, it's a matter of intensity. I mean, when I take a pro position, which I'm happy to take, I can on a scale of 1 to 5, I can be anywhere on that scale. And if I take a con position on somebody, I can be anywhere on that scale of 1 to 5. Where let's say 1 is really soft and you're being gentle and you're trying to push the person in little increments, and a 5 is where you're really trying to say, you're nuts, you gotta hear this. And where we maybe all have gotten to this 5 level way too often, and certainly there's nothing being heard when we're all at the 5 level.
It's interesting because I heard a number of people say, we were having a family discussion one night, that they'd like to see Trump in there because he'll be so bad, everything will just fall apart, and it will be the way to end the system, that Trump could be the system ender. And my father was I could see the look of horror on his face. And I said, yeah, I said to one relative, I said, I can kind of see that. Let's just all vote for Trump and just blow the whole thing up. And my dad's like, oh my God, I never dreamed I would hear my family commie say she wanted to vote for Trump to blow the whole thing up. And Daddy's like, don't blow it up until after I'm gone. I still need my, Social Security and my VA benefits. But what do you think in terms of that, Bernie?
Well, I think that's the silver lining to a Trump victory is that Susan Sarandon said it on Rachel Maddow's show. At least with Trump, they'll blow it up sooner. It's like there's a silver lining that I see. But now, most people don't want to see our economy collapse. I do. I do for, I think, sane reasons, not because I want to experience that or I want other people to experience all of that hardship that goes with that. And death and all sorts of negative consequences. But I do believe that the sooner we end what is getting worse, the better off we are. So I'm for whatever it takes to get us there quicker. And I think that the Democratic Party and most independents would make their first priority is to save the system.
Well, there are those who believe, very smart people that I've talked to, I don't know if I'm exactly in their camp, who believe that the decline in 2008 was totally manipulated so that there could be this huge land grab. And it wasn't just the natural outpouring of a balancing, but it was a very calculated design to have this happen so that China could buy up California, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think if there is, I'm not so sure there would be an economic collapse because of Trump. I think there would be an economic...
Push the 5 button.
You're interrupting, Bernie.
Do it. Save the system. They believe they got to have a nuclear war. I mean, I'm afraid of that. I'm deathly afraid of that. But I'm deathly afraid of it regardless of who the candidates are. And I do think Trump is really unintelligent. I mean, it's amazing how we have a country where you become so rich, being, I guess, crafty, but not being worldly or philosophically very deep.
And also have a rich daddy.
Mm-hmm. So I'm sorry I had to bash Trump there. I'm trying to keep it equal here.
Well, thank you, Bernie.
Thanks, Bernie.
Thanks, guys. Good show. Keep it up.
Cheers.
Okay, this is KWMR Weekly Let's Talk call-in show with co-host Robin Carpenter, Paul Raffel, and I'm Mary Frank. To join our conversation, please call us at 415-663-8492.
Yes, and a friend of mine is equating Donald Trump to Mikhail Gorbachev. That Gorbachev set about to dismantle the state, and Reagan kind of got in the way and made it last, actually longer. But that was Gorbachev and his friend's intent was to dismantle that Soviet state. And he thinks that if Trump is elected, it'll have the same effect. We'll dismantle what's here right now, but then who knows what will come.
Well, the problem with Trump on that regard is that he's an extremely unstable personality.
Yeah. Oh, he's an
extremely
sociopath
and I don't think
I wouldn't even say he's a sociopath, because sociopaths have really highly organized minds and can really plan and follow through with plans of manipulation.
True.
I wouldn't say that he's even that.
We did get an email from Murray Seward. Thank you, Murray, for always listening. He said, my initial thought, give honesty a try. If people get angry because I have a different perspective from them, probably they shouldn't be in my life. There you go. Of course, we need to recognize that some people don't want to talk about politics or current events. Bringing up such subjects with people like that shows a lack of manners. I won't do it, but for sure, if I'm with someone who is into politics and current events, I have no problem sharing my perspective and being interested in the other person's viewpoint. The short answer, honesty is the best policy.
Amen.
Oh,
I love that.
Murray, that's great.
That's beautiful.
And I think that's the thing that I found being back home was, like my husband Andy does not like to get into political debate. He's very uncomfortable with that. He and I will debate, but he does not like, particularly I can see why, he's on my home turf. Although when I went back to Minnesota, I was arguing away with his family. But, I think Murray's quite right, too. There's some people that don't want to have that discourse. And then that's just not what you talk about. Thank God there are other things in life besides politics and religion.
What would that be?
Cooking. Food.
Oh, yes.
Where are we going to go to dinner?
Yeah, right.
Or what we're going
never
to make
eat
for
sausage.
dinner.
Damn it. You sausage eaters.
Well, one thing that I think is so interesting, you don't eat sausage? Oh my
I do.
Wait, I missed that. I think the thing that's fascinating, too, about this particular election is the whole Bernie Hillary thing. And to be perfectly frank, to talk about Trump, I personally, and having worked on different campaigns on a national level for the DNC, and having watched things with the DNC, and having been in the South and seen the rise of the Clintons and some of the things that they did, for being a DNC insider, I find Hillary Clinton terrifying, to be frank. And she and Bill, totally. I blame 2008 on the repeal of Glass-Steagall. Clinton still is saying, we just need to regulate fracking when it's perfectly clear that we need to stop fracking. So, and her hawkish things, it's getting Henry Kissinger politics back. And, so there are many, I find, Donald Trump scary on the side of being a rather uneducated not very bright person with a sort of fractured childlike personality. And then Hillary Clinton, on the other hand, is a highly honed, political, ruthless person who doesn't mind, doing what she did in Libya and Syria and destabilizing the world and killing children and, and saying things like the Central American children being sent here because they were being murdered in their villages, and it was a last resort that that we would teach those parents a lesson not to send their kids here, keep them there, so when her true colors come through, the cold-bloodedness and cold-heartedness and the
dishonesty,
dishonesty.
Yeah.
So I know so many people that I adore that are staunch Hillary supporters are horrified that I would even say these things about her, because I'm betraying the liberals by, if I could criticize Hillary or support Bernie, I'm helping Trump. And so I find that all, that in a way is a more interesting trend to see, and the attacking of the millennials, the attacking of the young people by the DNC, the Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who's sort of the Satan of the DNC right now, and their complete disregard for how do we listen to the Bernie supporters? How do we open the dialogue there? They're just illustrating not listening, not reaching across the aisle. And it almost has this feeling to me of like, look, we've got this election in the bag. If we can't win it legally, we'll just,
take it.
We'll just take it from voting machines or whatever. That there's almost an attitude of we don't care and you are the bad guys. So actually within our own party, and I know, my husband was bringing up what it was like in the 60s. So, and I don't remember that much about what happened at the convention in Chicago, but Andy was saying he doesn't think it's a lot different than then. I do think it's a lot different than then. I don't know, Mary.
We were filming it at that point, and
what
we
was
witnessed
your feeling? Was it similar to now? Or
I think it was similar. I think it was, it's a spiral. It goes up a little bit, it improves a little bit, but some of the main principles were at work. There's tremendous dishonesty, tremendous manipulation, tremendous corporate influence. All of that was the same. It was another unpopular war. Fortunately, it was just Vietnam, not 7 other wars. It's so it's gotten worse in that regard. But on a civil rights matter, we saw policemen take their badges off and pull people of color into the alley and beat the crap out of them. Which, when Obama accepted his nomination speech in Grant Park, it was, at the time, very moving to me, because the last time I was in Grant Park, it was to film the riot, and to see all of that go down. But, I think they've done everything in their imagination and possibility, quantum leap deal to stop Obama, and no matter what he did. So, really who's in control of the government? And that's why all of these conversations now, lately for me, does it really make too much difference? I'm not so sure.
And maybe if it doesn't make too much difference, maybe it is the time that we reach across to each other, whoever we're saying we're supporting, and look at, once again, what is the end game? What is it that you want? You want a peaceful country where children get good educations and we have healthy food, and maybe there's a way we can bring conversations back to what are our goals.
So, it's a really great idea, is if you get into a political discussion, is to ask that question right away. Right? As soon as you start talking about what do you want to happen if you get this guy in or this woman in or whatever, and if there's common ground, unfortunately there's a lot of it's Mexicans, it's immigrants, got to keep the immigrants, and so then again you would say,
well, why are you afraid of the immigrants? What do you think they're doing bad?
Right.
And
instead of blowing up, which is what I tend to do. I'm a redhead, or I used to be. So, But no, I think that's really a valid thing to say. I think it diffuses a situation that could get nasty, I guess. I'll have to give it a try.
I think somebody pointed out that they're arguing that the immigrants are coming in, lazy bastards, and they're getting all this free stuff, and they're also the people that are taking our jobs. It's a little bit of a
when you bring facts to that discussion, it's a little bit enlightening. When I was explaining to my family that put about $80 billion a year into Social Security because they never get that money. They're using fake work cards, but they're paying into Social Security, and we're getting all kind of tax dollars and things because they don't file for taxes to get money back, so that actually we would lose and that happened in Alabama and Georgia when they put those harsh immigration laws in. The fields sat, the crop sat in the fields and rotted, and I brought that up, but remember how that hurt. So if you talk about our ultimate goal is this, then will you be open to they aren't the ones taking our jobs away? They aren't, But, yeah, I think going with what is it that you want, and then why are you afraid that my candidate or my party's way is not going to let you have that?
Yeah, wonderful. That's great.
Well, I want to thank all of our listeners and our callers today for your participation, and I hope you'll tune in every Thursday at 11 because your voice really does matter.
KWMR does not take a stand on any of the issues discussed on Let's Talk. Opinions expressed on this program are those of the hosts, the callers, and don't necessarily reflect the views of KWMR, its board of directors, underwriters, or members.
So next week, next Thursday at 11 a.m., we will be discussing hypocrisy in the 21st century and asking questions like, how does this hypocrisy, or the acceptance of hypocrisy, affect your expectations for the future? We hope you'll tune in then and join another lively discussion. This has been Let's Talk on KWMR with your hosts Robin, Mary, and I'm Paul. Now stay tuned for New School at Commonweal Conversations.